Hello, and welcome to Planeswalk with Us, a Magic the Gathering lore podcast with your host, Zach.
And co-host Scott, a.k.a. Cyborg Heart.
Welcome, Scott, to the first episode, technically, of Zendikar, although we're not really going to talk about Zendikar at all.
Well, I mean, that's what we do with Innistrad, is we kind of like a rundown prehistory.
Yep.
Major characters were introduced, and then we got it.
Yeah. So the goal of this episode, we're going to be covering the origins of the original founding Gatewatch members. So that'll be Jace, Chandra, Nissa, and Gideon. We're going to discuss who they are, what they became, and how they got there. First, I got a bit of a thing here to read. Zendikar, a massive plane whose lore spans literal millennia and numerous sets and expansions. A plane whose lore is key to understanding many major events through Magic the Gathering's timeline, and involves a ton of major players. A plane we won't be talking about too much today. Today we're doing the origins, and I'm really excited. We're starting with Jace, and I'm excited to see if this context changes your opinion of Jace even slightly.
It's, again, like I said, like I have three thoughts about Jace. The first is, I agree, he's very smart, he's very powerful.
Yeah.
I like that about him. That aspect I really like. What I don't like is, again, we talked about this, you'll listen to this in the next episode, actually, is if there's two doors in front of him, option A is everyone lives 100% of the time. Option B is everyone lives, but there's a 30% chance he will run towards option B every single time.
Yeah.
And my third thought is, and this is why I really don't like him, like, I can forgive the other part because that's experience.
Yeah.
This also ties into experience, but he races his own mind.
Yeah.
Like, as someone who has and we talked about this in Innistrad, but as someone who has no control over, like, their memory issues, who would give anything to get my lost memories back, the fact that he willingly does it pisses me off to no end.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of hoping that the context here might, it'll provide context, whether or not it changes your opinion.
Right.
Remains to be seen. So just to give a brief side note, Zendikar is huge. It starts with Battle for Zendikar, and it ends all the way into Phyrexia. So there are, like, and I'm not even joking, probably like 8 sets dedicated to Zendikar alone. I've read one book. I am in the process of reading 2 more. And, countless stories. One of the hardest things, though, is that the original Zendikar, which we've talked about this on Innistrad, but Sorin was involved on the original Zendikar.
Yeah.
They sealed the Eldrazi there. Spoilers, I guess, but, like, I think we talked about it a couple times already.
No, like, legitimately every episode of Innistrad it comes up.
Yeah. So, the problem is that came out in 2009, and there's one book that was written at Zendikar, and that's In the Teeth of a Comb, which only covers the actual, like, current day happenings.
Yeah.
I do believe there were stories on the Magic website, but I went looking, I checked with the Wayback Machine. I spent, like, literally 2 hours trying to find the old stories, and I just couldn't. So what we're going to be covering, and this includes the origins of the Gatewatch, is the revised history. So that's everything post 2015 that they essentially they released a series of stories and mostly just the stories on the Magic website for the, like, to what's the word I'm looking for, to preclude the release of Battle for Zendikar, which is where the Gatewatch was formed and where all the events actually take place. So anyway, all that is just to say that it's been a doozy trying to get information.
Magic's, like, approach to these sets is every couple generations, or probably like once or twice every 2 or 3 years, they pick a plane and just make that, like, the center of everything for a while, and before they move on to the next. Because first was Dominaria, Ravnica, Zendikar.
Maybe Eldraine. Well, we'll have to see, because we've only got one set at the time.
To a much lesser extent, Innistrad. Innistrad is more like the convergence of that. It's the opposite. People just keep going there rather than it affects other places.
Yeah.
But, like, it legitimately, like, every, I would say, 6 to 8 months, they're like, all right, we're going to pick a plane. It becomes our central story focus for everything for a year or two.
And the other thing to note, too, is that over the years, they've changed their story method for the lore, like, a number of times. It started with the books. They stopped that because the books weren't selling that well. And then they went to online for a while. They did webcomics, then they switched back to books briefly, and then they're back to webcomic or online stories now. So Zendikar was kind of at this tumultuous period where they're trying to switch how, like, they being wizards is trying to switch how they deliver lore to people.
Right.
So it's made it quite difficult.
I mean, I just found out that there's a book to Innistrad that I had no idea existed.
Yep.
And that was 3 days ago. And I'm like, I've been looking at this for months. What the hell?
Well, and that is something I've thought about in the research, and I think is a goal of this podcast, at least for me going forward, is to actually put a highlight on the lore.
Yeah.
Because, like, right now, like, Magic the Gathering makes its money from the cards, like, obviously.
Exactly.
If we can get a following and draw attention to the lore, then I think that's
a positive effect for that.
Yeah, and that's an influence for Wizards to make it, one, more accessible, and two, to continue doing it.
Well, they came out with what was it? Like the artwork books. We talked about that in the Innistrad episode. I would love for each plane we do to get the artwork book for each of them.
Yeah.
I got a shelf here that is just gaping for some books.
Yeah, I've been reading The Art of Magic the Gathering Zendikar, and, like, of course the artwork's amazing, and it's also a huge boon to my research for fleshing things out, because it discusses the plane in detail. But yeah, today we're not talking about Zendikar. We're talking about Planeswalkers. Most of the listeners of this podcast have heard us mention at least two Planeswalkers in particular. Jace, because you hate him, and Chandra, because I love her.
This is coming out after Kamigawa, right?
Yeah.
So we've also talked about
Kamigawa's already out.
Kaito the Emperor,
Kaito
the Emperor, and Tamio too.
Kaito Wander, Tamio Hey.
God, I knew that was coming.
Of course. I mean, of course.
No, but we've talked off on Planeswalkers, Tezzeret. I mean, so this isn't a new concept anymore.
Yeah, no. So, and I think it's pretty interesting. I wanted to provide the context for who the Gatewatch is, because going forward, once we get to Zendikar, probably part 2, the Gatewatch take up the majority of Magic the Gathering's lore. Like, they're involved in everything. Like, we talked about them.
They're the Avengers of the Multiverse.
We talked about them in Innistrad, which for us was in the past, but for the audience is in the future.
It's a weird release schedule for everyone.
Yeah, we batch record because it takes a lot of effort to, like, do these episodes. So we need the time to, like, give ourselves to actually be able to research this.
We're doing 2 or 3 episodes every recording session, and we're doing them every other week. Just to get the backlog.
Yeah, and it's just it's a mountain of research. Like, I spend no less than, like, it's a second full-time job essentially. Anyway, Jace Belleron, hereby known as Jace, is originally from the plane of Vryn in the Magic the Gathering year of 4534. He was born in a place called Silmot's Crossing. For a quick description of Vryn, the main feature is that its landscape is dotted with large mage rings. These rings are mana collecting stations that also house many inhabitants of the plane and serve as lines on a conduit to the core. They are used to mine mana and send it to the mage elite known as the Amprin League. Jace was not born as a telepath. He actually acquired the skill very early on, but it was not something innate to him.
Okay.
Once he did, that's where the origin story starts.
Acquired, just a quick interrupt. Do you mean like someone gave him the ability, or he awakened it?
He awakened it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess he was, in that sense, maybe he was born with it. It's just like he didn't come out the
hole.
Yeah, he didn't come out the womb reading minds. He got it a couple years in.
Okay.
Which is going to be a common thread for a lot of what we're going to talk about.
I mean, that's
today.
a lot of Magic users, Planeswalkers.
Yeah.
Like most Planeswalkers. Every Planeswalker, you need a traumatic event just to ignite the spark.
Yeah, and that's actually something we're going to... it was actually almost vindicating in a way, because as I was reading these stories, back in our first episode, we talked about how a Planeswalker spark is caused by trauma. And it was vindicating because it was like, I reading the stories, I'm like, oh yeah, we were right. Like, that 90% of this is trauma-based.
Yeah. We'll get into it later, but like Tezzeret's backstory...
Yeah.
Like, that it...
Well, we've touched on Tezzeret's backstory. Like, he was so reviled by his parents, he didn't even have a name.
Right, he was beaten down his entire life.
Yeah.
Like, it took not even the death of his mother in front of him to ignite it. Like, this is You need something to pull this out.
You need a trigger. And so most of the information we're going to talk today for Jace comes from Jace's origin. The story is called Jace's Origin, Absent Minds. It was written by Kelly Diggs, and it's available on Wizard's website. It starts following a young Jace in his hometown. The story begins with a dejected Jace heading toward home. Home, in this case, is the poorest district of Silmott's Crossing, where in order to actually return or leave home, they have to climb 23 flights of stairs, or pay tolls to use poorly built lifts. These are the poorest of the poor. They're like dirt farmers. So they got.
This is the outer wall of Ba Sing Se.
There's no war in Ba Sing Se.
I didn't say there was, because there's no war in Ba Sing Se.
Yeah.
Right.
Jace is reluctant to return home because he did something at school that he knows his father is going to be upset for. In this trudge, it's made immediately clear that Jace's telepathy is not a major boon, as he reads the minds of many people, gleaning many of their negative thoughts on the way home. It's uncontrollable to him at this point. Right. As he's walking by, imagine you're walking down a mall, and you hear every random, person thinking, look at that dude's shoes, or that guy smells weird.
Very classic mind reader story.
Yep.
I have read and watch so much media about mind readers. There's actually a full episode of DC's Justice League where we get a look inside Martian Manhunter.
Yep.
And he's doing it uncontrollably.
Yeah.
And it's just negative thought after thought. It drives him insane.
Well, yeah, because everybody has weird, immediate, judgmental thoughts, and if you're a good person, you think about it and go oh, that was rude, and then you don't voice it.
Quick side note: I do want to apologize. I made a mistake in one of our previous episodes about Kebert Zella. It is not about General Zod. It's about Mr. Mystic from the 12th Dimension. I don't want to piss off the DC nerds. Continue.
I'm going to go on a limb and say that I don't think anybody cares.
I care.
I don't even know.
This is an information podcast.
I truly have no clue what you're talking about, but there you go, audience. So upon getting home, Jace also reads his father's mind uncontrollably, knowing that his father is going to be very upset with him. When Jace enters, his father starts to question him about a message that his dad got from the school. Jace's crime, what he had done, it was a test that he had studied for. But he realized halfway through the test he didn't know the answers. After focusing his mind, all the correct answers just came to him, and he answered the test that was supposed to actually be impossible. So the test wasn't meant to, it was not meant to be solved. But because Jace is a telepath, he gleaned the answers anyway. And that was the crime. The school assumed he was cheating and passed on that information to his father. His father attempts to set Jace straight, at which point Jace bails, leaving his home on the bottom ring and climbing all the way up to the secret area at the top. According to the story, he goes here because the voices of the other people are weak. He's far enough away that he doesn't have to listen to people's thoughts constantly. The story goes on to describe Vryn and mentions a group known as the Separatists. While up here, the rings begin to activate, and Jace settles down for a dinner he stashed earlier to watch the mana flow. So, what happens is, they live on this giant mana ring, and then when the Amprin League needs mana, they channel it through the rings and store it in, the central core. You can actually see this depicted in the card Mage Ring Network, which is drawn by Jung Park. The rings, not Jace eating. Unfortunately, his meal is cut short by a group of local bullies, hereby known as ruffians. The only warning Jace gets in his mind is touching the thoughts of another and hearing, "There's the freak," before the ruffians accost him. The three bullies are Tuck, the big one, Caden, the stupid one, and Jillet, the angry woman in charge. Jace tries to leave, but they prevent his escape down the hatch and more or less acknowledge that he wasn't cheating. This doesn't really earn Jace any favor, though, because they think he's a freak for being able to read their minds. Jace debases himself and tries to play with the bullies, thinking that if he follows their commands, they'll just let him leave. They don't, and they start beating him up. Jace, during this beating, reads Tuck's mind and brings up Tuck's drunkard father, who used to beat Tuck whenever he came home. Obviously upset, Tuck lays into him even further, but Jace is relentless in digging up the memories and feelings. Tuck shoves him, causing Jace to go over the edge of the ring, and Jace is barely able to catch himself from falling down, thousands of feet to the ground.
Yeah.
With Jace's strength failing him, Jace, without meaning to, actually jumps into Caden's mind and uses the control to make Caden shove Tuck away and save him. So he essentially enters Caden's mind and he sees himself from Caden's perspective and takes control and forces Caden to pull up Jace. At this point, Jace bails. He runs away from the bullies and he heads home where he packs a bag. At this point, he has decided, I'm going to run away. I don't want to cause my parents any more trouble. His mother, Rana, is sympathetic and hears Jace out, hears what happens. Because by the time he gets home, word has already spread of what occurred here. The bullies the word had gotten ahead of him, essentially.
Right.
Obviously, leaving out the part where the bullies were beating Jace up and threw him over the edge. At this point, he reveals to his mother that he's a telepath, and his mother is cherishing and supportive of Jace's talents. Like, she's very accepting of him, which is going to be a common thread throughout these stories.
At this point, I mean, Chase's whole life has been crap, essentially. Why wouldn't he tell his parents this earlier?
Because he thinks he's a freak, and people think he's a freak.
Yeah,
like this ability is not a popular. I mean, because imagine, if you met somebody who could read your mind.
Kill him.
Exactly.
No hesitation. Don't blink. Just got him.
Yeah, no. But yeah, no. It's just not good. Even if they just brush the surface thoughts, that's such an invasion of yourself and your privacy that you're gonna not be thrilled with it. Jace ends up actually staying instead of running away for a day because he thinks he wants to hear his parents out. At this point, his parents called for a teacher, and Jace goes to the observation deck and meets a Sphinx. This Sphinx is a fellow telepath, possibly, as far as I know, one of two on the entire plane. His name is Alhammaret.
How do you spell that?
Alhammaret. I believe he has his own cards, but it's Alhammaret. This Sphinx agrees to train Jace and takes Jace away to become the Sphinx apprentice. This is mostly to the delight of the backwater dinguses who live at Silmott's Crossing. As they are flying away, Jace once again touches the mind of Tuck, the bully who was beating him up, and he threatens Tuck to keep him away from his family. The Sphinx hears this through his telepathy, and he gives some advice to Jace. "Tread that path carefully," said the Sphinx. "In time, you'll become more terrifying than you can imagine, and fear, once inspired, can seldom be eased." Pretty decent advice.
Yeah, no, true. I mean, there's I looked into this a little bit myself. The Sphinxes are very renowned for their mental abilities. And so if you got a Sphinx on you, hey, you may want to cut that shit out or be careful. You should listen. They're pretty powerful in their own right.
At this point, Jace didn't know, this is the first time Jace learns that he's not the only telepath on this planet. So obviously he has no reason to be guarded because up until now he assumed he was the only one.
He does have a card, by the way. It's Alhammaret High Arbiter.
Yes. During the flight, Jace brings up that they're flying to Separatist territory. Alhammaret corrects him and saying it's controlled by the Trovians. Then Alhammaret describes his job to Chase. As you just said, he's an arbiter, whose job is to negotiate temporary peace between the Trovians and the Amprin, who are the main power of mages, and the Amprin are the ones currently in control of the mage rings. The war is essentially just the two powers trading control every couple years over this mage ring. So, the Separatists will take over, the Trovians will take over for a while, and then the Amprins will strike back, getting control again of the rings.
So there's not much stability on this plane, from what I understand. Because, I mean, if there's political instability
put a pin in that, because it's actually going to come up here shortly about the stability. Also, just this is a side note, I was searching for Trovians, and there are actually no official magic cards that feature these beings. I did find a card someone made on Reddit that I wanted to shout out because it was really cool. It's called Corinne, the Trovian Separatist. It was posted by Salmiaki Aficionado. I don't know if that's I don't know what that is. I assume it's an anime character or something, but yeah. I just wanted to shout it out because when I was looking into it, I'm like, oh, this is really cool. Back to the lore, the Arbiter's job is essentially to prevent destruction of the mage rings by either party. So essentially they broker a less bloody war to prevent either side's annihilation. The story then skips 2 years where our sweet baby Jay is now 15. And that's what I call my nephew, sweet baby Jay, because my nephew's name is Jace.
See, I tried so hard not to bring that up because I have a nephew named Griffin, and I call him Griff.
Yeah.
And we got Sven.
We got Sven.
On Innistrad.
Yeah. Well, sweet baby Jay, 15, and at 15, he's a very accomplished mind mage and an illusionist. The training is also physical, so he's actually in pretty good shape at this point as well. His training involved going with Alhamra to negotiations between the Amperin and the Trovians, and reading the minds of the involved parties. Alhamra explains to Jace that this keeps the parties honest, meaning that like if they know someone's reading their mind, they're not going to lie. Right. And Jace finds these meetings rather uneventful. Jace's training involved reading, practicing magic, and mental sparring with Alhamra, along with illusions. At one point, his illusions were so powerful, he overwhelmed himself and fainted. So he tricked his own mind so strong that he just passed out, which is
This is something that comes up later.
well, and that's what I said about providing context about Jace, because I, at the very least, you understand why he is who he is. After becoming so accomplished, Jace begins running intelligence missions on its own, where he would use illusions to infiltrate the camp of either party, steal the secrets from the mind of the generals, and then bring the information back to Alhamra. Alhamra would then bring these plans up in meetings at strategic times in order to slow or stop the fighting on the front lines. Like every time he came up with these plans and brought them in the meetings, it stopped the war for a couple months.
Right.
At this point, Jace is happy to have seemingly found his way to use his powers, which, again, were made him reviled. He's happy that he's helping people, or he thinks he's helping people with this. In his most recent outing, he gathers intelligence on a Trovian offensive that would be bloody and brutal and probably lead to civilian death. Jace gives his information to Alhamra and draws out the battle maps so the Arbiter can put a stop to this offensive. At this point, while drawing the maps, Jace decides to try and break into his mentor's mind, mostly out of arrogance. And this is a common theme with Jace, is that he's pretty full of himself. Like, yeah. It's something we've seen even in the brief times we touched upon him in the podcast, but like, yeah, he's pretty full of himself.
I mean, he meets a half-crazed woman in the middle of, like, Innsmouth on Innistrad, and he's like, I'm gonna break into this crazy woman's mind. It takes too long to talk to people. I'm good enough.
Yeah,
I can just scoop her brains out.
Let's scoop it and go. I'm busy, apparently. At this point, while breaking into Alhamra's defenses, he finds a vision. In this vision, he sees himself traumatized by his own illusions, and then planeswalking into the blind eternities. So this is a vision he steals from Alhamra's mind, meaning that he doesn't know that this happened. Jace, he being Jace, doesn't know that this happened.
So...
yeah, I know that's a little confusing. So he goes into Alhamra's mind, he finds a vision of himself planeswalking. So is
Alhamra seeing the future, or has this happened and Jace returned?
This has happened, and Alhamra has removed the memory from Jace.
Oh, okay.
As a fellow mind mage.
What is with these mind mages? Because Jace does this like 80 times.
Well, we're gonna learn why Jace picks this behavior up from Alhamra. Then he sees his Then he sees his mentor wiping the information from his own mind. Back in his own body, Jace plays off the intrusion, which went seemingly undetected, and returned to his room. He then tries to planeswalk, but is unable, and then he comes to a realization. In order to keep his knowledge of this information a secret, he has to remove it from his own mind. Because if he knows it, then his mentor will find it. So doing so, he writes a journal entry about the knowledge and then wipes everything he just learned from his own brain. Which is kind of the context for, like, you complain about how he constantly does that, and it's a behavior that starts here.
No, don't get me wrong, like, for covert missions, especially if you're dealing with other mind mages, for things like that, I totally understand that, but from just wanting to, I don't want to remember something, I'm just going to go squeegee my own mind, that's what annoys me.
Yeah, well, I think what it is that he just learns that this behavior is instilled in him here, and it just becomes a habit, weirdly.
This is honestly, this is starting to sound like based on the fact that he keeps doing it and his like downfall, his mental stability, this almost sounds like a drug habit to him. Like he physically it's an addiction. He can't stop himself.
That might be the case on this one. I'm not entirely sure, but that's a good theory at least. It's not like explicitly stated, but I think you might be right. Over the next couple weeks, he stumbles upon this note that he left himself, gets angry every single time, and then each time he finds it, wipes his mind of it again. might be a drug habit. You're right. Yeah. Later, he...
a heroin needle. What's this? A heroin needle. What's this?
Who put this heroin here? Okay, thanks for the heroin, me. Later, he infiltrates another camp, this time one that is heavily defended and controlled by the Amperins. He decides to go ahead and try the infiltration anyway, as the defenses indicate that someone important is there. He finds the general and invades his mind. In it, he finds a memory of a hooded, arrogant figure, giving the Amperin general the Trovian battle plans. As the general pays the figure for this information, present Jace learns that, in fact, the information came from past Jace. Jace himself gave the general the information of the Trovian battle plans, forgot about it, and then is now here stealing the information from the same general.
And this is why you don't wipe your mind, ladies and gentlemen.
No, we're going to find out it was his mentor that was doing it. So, Jace is forced to abruptly wipe the general's mind, leaving him blank and broken, as the guards find him in the general's tent. Jace, upon learning how his mentor is playing him for profit and wiping his memory, returns and packs his things ready to flee. So, like, basically this memory shows Jace that, like, he has been a tool of Alhammaret to keep the war going.
For money.
For money. He finds this note, as he packs up his things, he finds a note about the planeswalking and then wipes his mind once more before he decides to confront Alhammaret.
You're like, oh, this might change your outlook on... No, I want to bash him with a lamp.
Yeah. When he goes to Alhammaret, he proposes a test of will with his mentor, and a psychic battle ensues. Alhammaret invades Jace's mind with ease, but his intrusion allows Jace to intrude in return. The next passage I'll read directly from the story. Finally, he saw the true shape of the last 2 years, saw the perilous edge he'd been dangling from all this time. Alhammaret had played him. He used Jace as a go-between to gather information, deliver it, and learn more just in the delivery. And every time, he wiped Jace's memory of it, taking the money for himself and kept the war going. If your business was negotiating peace, where was the profit in actually achieving it?
This is something we do see with, going forward, because I've looked into Sphinxes on a number of planes. Yeah. This is something we do see for them, is they like to play both sides always.
Yeah.
And it's usually for personal gain.
Yeah. So Alhammaret, definitely not a good guy.
No.
He just happened to be the only mind mage that there was.
Also, ugly as hell. Like, if you look at his close-up of his face...
do we have a card?
There's several, but just look at his artwork.
Alhammaret. We'll describe it for the audience, in case you can't Google it. Yeah, I can't. What the hell? It looks like a different face grafted on his body.
Right, that's what I'm saying. This guy is not...
Like, he's got the body of, like, I guess, like a griffin, but he has, like, a man face. Like and not even like
this is what Sphinxes are supposed to look like, but this isn't... They're usually more blended.
Yeah.
Like, someone cut off the head of a lion and just grafted a human face on there.
Yeah.
With the most unattractive... God damn. Unattractive facial hair.
Come on. That face is probably based on a model. Let's not say he's super unattractive. He has a goatee, though, so you know he's evil.
Just look at this picture.
Ew.
It's not a good-looking man.
Yeah.
Again, it's not the face. It's the face grafted on the body that makes it bad.
Yeah, it does not, like, blend. Jace, now connected with Alhammaret's mind, Alhammaret had started wiping Jace's memory in order to salvage him as a useful tool. Essentially, Alhammaret's like, okay, I'm not going to kill you. I just want to remove all the troublesome details from your brain because you're too valuable to me. But Jace, at this point, is in Alhammaret's mind and starts to wipe Alhammaret's mind. In doing so, he opens himself up to Alhammaret's, influence, and Jace forgets his own name, his family, and his home. But in the process, he removes Alhammaret's ability or memory of how to breathe. This obviously kills him. Jace then planeswalks to Ravnica with no memory of who he is and uses his mind-reading powers to try and learn more about the plane that he's on. He finds the location of a woman who takes in lost souls like himself. Her name is Imara Tandis. That is Imara Tandis. Imara Tandris.
How do you spell it?
EMMARATANDRAS. Because I think she has a card. He does get taken in by her, and in doing so, he learns two things about himself. He just kind of remembers his own name and his hometown.
I actually have her commander deck. She
Really?
was the first deck I bought. She's that token deck I have.
Oh, yeah. You don't use that one that much. That's why
She's a shit commander.
So, recalling his name and his hometown, he sets off to discover or recall who Jace Beleren actually is. Now, that's more or less it for the origin story. We'll cover him, like, there's going to be in the future a Jace-specific episode.
Yeah, we're going to have to.
Because he's in so much shit. But on Ravnica, he gets involved with Tezzeret and Nico Bolas. He becomes the living guild pack. Then in his first meeting with Chandra, he steals an important scroll from her and wipes her memory of that encounter. Then he makes his way to Zendikar.
Ravnica is one of the major planes that I want to cover.
Yeah, I would actually be very happy if you did.
Mostly
after what Zendikar is putting me through.
Dude, look what I went through with Innistrad, just tracking down names. I spent 3 hours the other night tracking down the names of the different werewolves.
Yeah.
And I got 3 names out of it and no cards.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Don't get me wrong, I enjoy every second of it. It is a slog sometimes, though.
Yeah. But yeah, so Ravnica we're going to cover. I mean, that one's going to be its own 70-part episode series because there are 3 major planes kind of throughout Magic the Gathering. There's Dominaria, which we're going to cover eventually, but that one involves reading 13 books.
Yeah,
probably.
You might have to take prehistory. I got to probably take post-history.
Yeah, we'll actually have to work together on that one. There's Dominaria, there's Ravnica, which you're going to cover, and then there's Zendikar. And those 3 kind of cover the major planes where the vast majority of the lore takes place.
They're one of those planes that's just everything's connected to them. We're just going to have to come with hub planes. Just start calling them that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Dominaria, that was the main setting for a while. Then they switched over to Ravnica.
Yep.
Zendikar for the Titans and whatever happened. Back to Ravnica. It looks like we might actually be doing Ixalan next.
That'll be fun. It'll be nice to have a smaller plane to take a break.
I've got 3 small planes I'm going to cover next so that we get some spaced out episodes.
I'm looking forward to New Capenna, but that's 7,000 years in the future.
And that is a lot of Phyrexian stuff there.
Yeah.
So have fun with that.
Yeah, well, that's neck deep in the Phyrexian invasion. March of the Machine's going to be a bitch.
No, their prehistory is Phyrexian too.
Yeah.
So,
interesting. Okay. But yeah, so that's Jace's origins. Up next is Gideon, but first, did that give you any context about Jace?
It does.
Does
I
it change your
understand a little
opinion
bit. I understand that it's a learned behavior.
Yeah.
At the same time,
he's a grown-ass man.
He's a grown-ass man. Learn to better yourself.
Yeah.
And on top of that, again, it doesn't change the fact that I would give anything to lose the ability to stop forgetting stuff. I would give anything.
Yeah. I don't know. I wouldn't mind wiping them. No, actually, I take that
from someone
back.
who's gone through it. You don't want it.
Well, also because I mean, we are. I think we've talked about this, but we're the product of our experiences, right?
Exactly.
And I don't know that I would trade my memories for who I am, because even the bad times led me to where I'm sitting right now.
I mean, I lost. Jeez, when did we graduate high school?
2011. Yeah.
I lost from pretty much everything from 1993 to 2011.
Holy shit.
From my infection.
Yeah.
For those listening, I have an extensive medical history. I had a staph infection. It wiped out pretty much my long-term memory up until that point.
Holy shit. I mean, I knew that, but still, holy shit.
I get bits and pieces of high school and stuff. Don't remember middle school. I remember bits and pieces of elementary school though. That's all I got.
Yeah. Anyway, don't be a Jace.
Yeah.
Don't be a Jace Beleren.
I will say this, though, from what people have told me, I'm a better person, though. because I was turning into an asshole in high school. So
Yeah, I guess if this, some of your experiences turns you into an asshole,
Right.
losing your memory might be a better option.
I'd still want them back. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, no. I don't know. You felt fairly consistent to me, because we've known each other since high school. But
Like, hold on.
I don't know if I've noticed any dramatic shifts in your
We
personality.
met probably 2007. Oh my God, we've known each other 16 years.
Yep.
Where's my gun?
Yeah, and here we are. You don't know a gun.
No, I don't.
Up next is Gideon Jura, a planeswalker I knew pretty much nothing about until researching this episode. He's very powerful, as we're going to see. He is what's known as a Hieromancer, which is a white mage who uses their power to enforce lawful order and suppress the abilities of others. He was born on Theros in a place called Akros. Theros, for reference, is Magic the Gathering's Greek mythology theme set. Info for the story comes from Gideon's Origin, Kytheon Iora of Akros, written by Ari Levitch? Ari Levitch.
That's the guy I just looked up from my
Yeah, we actually mentioned this exact story in your Innistrad episode that's going to be coming out in the future, even though we recorded it.
No,
in
it's
the
a
past.
different. It's same author, different story.
Oh, cool. Okay, cool.
A lot of the authors repeat. The final 3 stories for Midnight Hunt are all written by the same person.
Okay.
If you guys are wondering, I'm going to be doing a supplemental episode for Innistrad. That's where I'll be shouting out all of them. I just don't want to take time for each episode to go through them.
Yeah, for episodes that were already monstrously long.
Yeah. I mean, each one of those is an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah, and this one's shaping up to be 2 hours because we're at the 35-minute mark, and we've only covered Jays. I know, time flies, because I just talked for half an hour. It didn't feel like it. It felt like 2 minutes. The story for Gideon opens up on a prison following a 13-year-old thief named Kytheon. He is musing about a bit of information given to him by his friend Drasis. The information is, quote, Hixus is the warden, but it's Ristos who runs this place. Kytheon wants to do something about this guy, but Drasis advised... Oh my god, the fucking Greek names are gonna kill me.
I should have covered this. I took Latin in high school. I know how to speak Latin and
Well,
Greek.
no, because I have this fucking whistle when I say S words sometimes, and it drives me absolutely crazy. And it's all like Hixus, Ristos, Drasis,
That's insane. I never would have guessed that.
yeah, I guess I have a mild lisp, and it drives me nuts. Kytheon wants to do something about this guy, but Drasis advises caution as they're just brawlers and petty thieves, not killers. Drasis is older and has been in prison for a couple months more than Kytheon. Kytheon refers to him as one of his irregulars. More on that later. Kytheon, for his part, hates bullies and is excited to meet Ristos. So he's looking to pick a fight with the guy who runs the prison.
So he's in prison.
Yes.
And he hates bullies.
Yes. For clarification, Ristos is another prisoner who he's like the king within the walls, essentially. Like, he runs the quote-unquote prison.
Yeah, he's the head of the skinheads in the prison.
Yeah, exactly, yes. Next on, after Kytheon gets introduced into this prison, all the prisoners are brought to a large underground chamber. In the center of this chamber is a large shaft leading up and down, with barrels being moved from down below to up above. Prisoners are turning a massive crank, which is what's causing the barrels to go up. These barrels are filled with water. They're harvesting water from an underground stream, sending it up to the plane, basically, up to the surface.
I mean, if you're going to be in prison, at least you're doing something somewhat noble.
I guess that's one way to look at it. It's not the worst, but the punishment is the physical labor.
Exactly.
It's like,
I'm not
okay.
saying it's good. I'm just saying there's a silver lining to this. It could be a lot worse.
Yeah. Well, actually, you would agree with young Kytheon because he actually relishes this labor. He was originally being trained to be a hoplite, which, for those who don't know Greek mythology, is like a Spartan warrior.
Yeah.
As a youth, he was destined to be a soldier. And then he gave in to, crime and petty theft. The first group of prisoners are given leave to rest, quote, and Kytheon jumps in for his turn at the crank. He's given a break after a long time and eats a meager meal of water and stale bread. During his break, a stout lackey calls tribute, and other prisoners start dropping their bread in a sack held by this man. Kytheon heckles this man, just like, bitch, you ain't taking my bread, and then scans the room, attempting to figure out who Ristos is. So he's picking a fight with the stooge in order to...
He's trying to find the boss.
Yeah, exactly. He's
choking his way up the ladder.
Exactly.
Like that, yeah.
Well, no, because while taunting the stooge, he's scanning the room to see who is reacting as a boss would.
Right.
He finally finds a large man and makes eye contact. After sizing this man up, Kythian taunts the lackey, then proceeds to beat the ever-living crap out of him. It's shown here that Kythian lives for the fight, and that fighting is the source of his particular brand of magic. During the fight, Kythian loses focus, and the lackey starts getting some hits in. In this pummeling, his skin ripples Kythian's with Band of Light, and the next punch is absorbed by his skin, which gives Kythian more energy. So he has the golden fleece, basically.
So there's actually a devil fruit like that in One Piece.
Come on.
It absorbs kinetic energy and turns it into physical mass and power.
Similar, yeah. So he can absorb the punches. He's invincible, and then he gets energy from it.
I actually wrote Gideon's whole live for the fight. I'm actually writing a character like that whose whole ability is as long as he's in combat, he cannot die.
That's cool.
Yeah. So he just lives like slaughter.
Yeah. And Kythian is much the same way. He absorbs this energy and then beats the ever-living fuck out of this lackey. Covered in blood, our intrepid hero grabs a piece of bread from the tribute sack and eats it, causing...
I'm going to beat up your man and then eat your tribute. Fuck you.
Exactly. And this causes Ristos to send in the rest of his thugs. Eventually, the guards arrive and find a beaten and bloody Kythian standing over the incapacitated thugs. Kythian drops in satisfied exhaustion as the guards swarm upon him. Next, we see young Kythian in the warden's office, face-to-face with Hixus. Hixus is a seasoned soldier and pretty relaxed at this meeting. He relays the list of crimes Kythian has committed at this prison, which Kythian is pretty proud of. It's noted that Kythian tried to escape on his way to prison, and that the warden knows about the irregulars run by Kythian in the Foreigner's Quarter, which is where Kythian is from. Kythian tells the warden he knew Ristos was weak and beat up his men to show that weakness. The warden agrees and states after Kythian was carted off by the guards, Ristos was beaten by the prisoners, showing that Kythian's plan was a success. Essentially, he upset
took out the guards so that everyone else could take out the boss.
Well, he upset the balance of power by showing that Ristos wasn't all powerful. It gave the prisoners the courage they needed to stand up against him. Also, I'm going to refer to Kythian as Kyth going forward because it's way easier. The warden then states that Ristos helped him maintain order in the prison and gives Kyth a challenge. The warden drops his keys on the table, and if Kyth can grab them, he's free. The warden gives Kyth a dagger as well, saying to kill him and get the keys. After a few moments of tense fightiness, Kyth drops the dagger, which pleases the warden, who offers to train him. Fightiness meaning like a standoff, but it's a Game Grumps joke that makes me laugh, where it's like they were steaming with fightiness.
It's just there's so much I love about lore, world building, stuff like that. I follow the world building subreddit, and stuff like this is just personal interactions build a world.
Yeah,
and the fact that this is a plane that's very much based on Greek honor,
yep.
It's it's all about fighting, but there is an honor to the fight, which I absolutely adore.
Well, and so that's something that happens here is because Kyth refuses to kill the warden for the keys, or even try, he's better than Ristos, because Ristos probably would have killed him.
He would have grabbed the dagger, stabbed him in the throat, and left.
Exactly. So the warden's testing him. At this point, the warden wants to train him. Kyth doesn't agree, but he's forced to train anyway. The next morning, he's brought to the yard. Hixus drops the keys in the center and stands over them. His offer is the same as before. Grab the keys and you're free. No killing this time. Kyth charges, but is stopped by chains of white energy that erupt from the ground and hold him back. This goes on for days and days and days, each one ending with the same result. The warden poses a question to Kyth, asking if he is not strong enough or fast enough to get the keys. In a rage, Kyth screams, "You won't let me." And the warden says that Kyth finally understands. From the story, this is the definition of hieromancy. This is directly from the story here. Yeah. It was common to call hieromancy law magic, but Hixus said this was an oversimplification. Laws are created by people, and laws can change, but laws are created in reaction to specific behaviors. A person steals, and laws are put in place to prevent more theft. This is the starting point for hieromancy as a practice. Every action has a response that can counter it. Hixus went on. A master of hieromancy can adapt to the scenario and turn it to his advantage. Victory in any contest will go to the one who has control of the situation.
So hieromancy almost feels like reaction magic.
Yeah, essentially. It's imposing order on a chaotic situation. And I'm not thrilled by that, honestly, because
Because that's the definition I read was, or it's order magic.
Yeah. And I just I don't like because it's literal chains, right? And if I was a magic card, I'd probably be red with a splash of green. And the idea of white chaining me down is upsetting to me. So I'm not a fan of this particular brand of magic, but
probably green, black, and blue for myself. centered on green.
Centered on green. Sorry for the long passage, but explains the goal of hieromancy so well I couldn't find any way to phrase it or pare it down.
Yeah.
Kythe gives in and trains at this prison for 4 more years, building an impressive body from turning the water crank and an impressive mind from the hieromancy training. After 4 years goes by, one day Kythe is woken to an alarm. Hearing the shrieks, Kythe realizes harpies have attacked the prison fortress. Hixus starts pounding on Kythe's cell door and makes another deal with Kythe. Fight to save the town, and you're free to go. He drops a sack of armor and a sword at Kythe's feet, and a moment later Kythe is standing next to a half-dozen similarly armed prisoners. After Hixus After Hixus uses his inspiring leader feat, they all run to the arena. Hixus gives a speech.
So he's a bard with hieromancy.
Inspiring leader is just a feat you can grab in D&D. Marlin, my fighter, had it. He was for the audience, he was a fighter, blacksmith, or former blacksmith. He was an adventurer turned blacksmith by his wife. And then he got an itchy foot and had to go adventuring again. But he was also extremely charismatic. So he was giving speeches and
He reminds me of Roofy.
But better speeches, in my opinion. Ian's not much of a speech guy.
Ian's our friend. He plays a giant barbarian.
He's a Goliath barbarian. Former captain of his tribe whose tribe was killed by mages, essentially. Yeah. So they all run to the arena, and the harpies, sensing fresh meat, charge the group of prisoners and Hixus. Kythe, whose training was not wasted, takes a handful of harpies on his own, using his sword skills and binding them using his new hieromancer abilities. Hixus then uses a massive Mamajam spell, which... I must have been bored or something when I was writing this.
What is this? Use a Mamajam spell.
Wait till we get to Nissa's story and you hear how I started. You're gonna shoot me in the face. He used a massive Mamajam spell, which disrupts the harpies' biorhythms, and the harpies start flying into each other and crashing to the ground. Kythe then runs to Hixus, and all the prisoners do the same, forming a phalanx at Hixus's command. They destroy many harpies this way, and Kythe shouts, "Hoplites of the broken chains!" Unfortunately, the vigor is short-lived as they hear a cry from the wall. Cyclops!
Is this at 3 a.m. you were writing this?
No, this was 2 days ago at 2 in the afternoon. The voice came out of... we've been podcasting for, at this point, almost 4 hours.
Yeah.
So we're getting a little loopy. Shortly followed by 2 more cries echoing the same. Kythe then proposes to Hixus a plan. He, Kythe, can rally his irregulars to defend the city. Hixus gives the okay, and Kythe heads off back to the foreigners' quarter. He finds the quarter empty, with most people defending the city. He finally finds one of his irregulars, a man named Zenon, who is working to get the town gate closed. You look like you had something to say.
No.
Okay. Kythe then proposes that they open the gates. After doing so, Kythe and his irregulars march confidently out, sealing the gate behind them, and leaving our intrepid heroes face to face with 2 Cyclops. Using his chain powers, Kythe shackles the giant while his irregulars get into position. Then he frees the Cyclops, whose momentum, he was struggling against the chain. He releases it, and then the momentum leads him directly into the spears of the irregulars, killing him. The second Cyclops charges Kythe, who almost effortlessly dispatches him. Our young Kythian here is one hell of a warrior.
Yeah, I mean, he's been training for 4+ years.
I mean, even he was trained from birth. He was meant to be a hoplite warrior, and then in prison he got trained and picked by Hixus to become his successor, essentially. After the battle, Kythe and his friend Drasus, now both freed from prison, marched up the mountains near their polis, Akros. And for those who don't know, polis is, I think, the Greek term for a city-state. Right? Question mark. I didn't look it up. I think
it sounds so familiar. Polis, you said?
Yeah, polis. I'm going off of memory here. I didn't bother to look it up.
City-state in ancient Greece, especially as considered in its ideal form of
Physiological
philosophical purposes. Jesus Christ, continue.
We have been talking for a long time.
It's been 3.5 hours.
So, from the story, this is a direct quote. Kythian watched the sun break over the tops of the mountain that rose above Akros. He stopped climbing for a moment to let the sunlight wash over his face. Drasus hurried to catch up. What are you doing? Kythian glanced down to Akros below. The prison is the last place in Akros to see the sun. Did you know that? And then Drasus' response doesn't surprise me. Well, today we are the first, said Kythian, closing his eyes and filling his lungs with crisp air. So they've earned their freedom, essentially, and get to enjoy a beautiful moment up on the mountain. I'm going to cry when we get to Chandra. I just realized, like, I feel like my emotion will stay right now, and I'm like, fucking goddamn it, I'm going to cry.
Have to carry this.
I'm going to cry on the podcast, I'm sure.
Oh, listen, we're going to have to cut out. Zach was crying for 45 minutes.
Kythe wanders through the mountains for a while until he is eventually accosted by a man. This man was Heliod, god of the sun. This moment is immortalized by the artist Raymond Swanland, who drew a picture of Heliod giving his spear to Kythe. And as a side note, Raymond Swanland drew so many cards from Magic, I can't even really begin to list them.
Yeah.
We're going to come across his art quite a bit going forward into Zendikar. He drew 2 Ashiok's, several cards from Kamigawa, a Magic the Gathering 2021 release of Ujin, and even goddamn Nicobolus. Dude's been busy.
Fun fact about Heliod, he gets completed.
Are you shitting me?
No, because the Phyrexians go against everyone. They legitimately entire planes get completed by these guys.
Oh my god, I can't even the god of the sun. That's incredible. I can't see that well. My eyes are garbage. Shoot it to my Discord if you got that.
Yeah, I can send it.
Scott's showing me an image. Great podcast content.
It literally just Google Heliod, spelled Heliod, and look at the gallery. It's pretty epic, like the poses they made.
Yeah, and actually, it's funny because Raymond Swanland's going to come up again in this exact same episode for a completely different set of art.
Like, I gotta give a massive shout out to the artists of Magic Gathering. I have not seen a single card, a single image, anything that has been below any sort of expectations. They've all been fantastic.
Yeah, and I think we talked about it earlier in this episode, like how I wanted to bring a focus on the lore, but I also want to bring a focus on because in Magic the Gathering, everything kind of gets lost in the game itself.
Yeah.
So I want to also start focusing on the writers and the artists, like the people who put a shit ton of work into this stuff. Like, we think we're working hard trying to prepare these podcasts. Like, picture the guy who fucking wrote this shit. I'm gonna cut half that sentence out because that's too many swears. But so yeah, I want to make a focus to encourage people to like look up these people and give their work the credit it deserves.
Please do. I just bought one of the this is gonna kill me that I can't remember this name, and I do apologize. I just bought an artist series from Magic Gathering store that is, what is it, Secret Lair? And I bought it for 2 reasons. 1, it has a card I need in it, and it's really cool looking. 2, it is a fantastic artwork. It was by John Avon. He did the artwork for Emerald from Innistrad.
Oh, the gross squid thing.
The jellyfish, yes. The 150-foot tall jellyfish.
Ew.
Yeah.
So at this point, Heliod tasks our friend Kythe with slaying a Titan who is stalking the lands on the orders of Erebos, god of the underworld. Mm-hmm. Spear of Heliod in hand, Kythe sets off to slay a demigod.
Fun fact, all of the god weapons in on this plane, you can actually get as equipment cards for the god itself.
Oh, it is actually called the Spear of Heliod?
Yeah.
Oh, I just wrote that.
I think it's the Spear of Heliod.
Yeah, I just wrote that. Wow, no shit.
Yeah. One of the cards for this plane, I don't remember which it is like a $50 card because of the stuff it does.
I mean, even the Spear of Heliod is pretty good. Creatures get a 1/1, pay 3 mana, tap, and destroy target creature that dealt damage to you this turn. Like, damn. Which is going to come up, lore-wise. The story then cuts from Kythe getting the Spear of Heliod to him sprinting away from the Titan. He leads the wounded Titan directly into a trap using his immortality magic to grab the Titan's finger and hold it, letting his irregulars hook and rope the Titan, bringing it to the ground. Once on the ground, Kythe makes short work of him, planting the spear deep into the Titan's chest, fulfilling the ordeal to become Heliod's champion. This victory is very short-lived, however, as Erebos, god of the underworld, shows up. Kythe lets fly, throwing a spear straight towards him, while Erebos cracked his massive whip and deflected the spear back to Kythe. Confident in his golden fleece, Kythe takes the spear head-on and is left standing after a massive explosion of light. After the dust settles, Kythe looks down at the spear and notices red on the back of his hands. While with growing trepidation, he turns back to see the lifeless bodies of his irregulars. His crew, his friends in childhood, were destroyed in the massive blast of the spear. This triggers Kythian Spark, and he finds himself broken and alone on the plane of Bant, part of the Shards of Alara. From the story, quote, in that moment, Kythian knew that he had left Theros, his home, behind. His irregulars were gone. Pain he brought with him. His ordeal had only just begun. And then now, his name is Gideon because of a vocal misunderstanding between him and the knights who greet him on the plane. It's like literally like the passage is like, oh, what's your name? Kythian Gideon? Like,
there's so much like well thought out stuff on Magic the Gathering that I love. The names are awesome, and then they do like childish shit like that. And there is a part of me that's like, oh, come on, but like. That's how stuff would happen in the real world. Like,
yeah. I mean, I guess it depends on your dialect. It's so hard for me to imagine a pronunciation of Gideon or Kythian turning into Gideon.
Kythian Gideon.
Yeah, like because they don't.
It could be that their language didn't have the chi sound, so it's
yeah,
the G.
I think that's the idea. But yeah, he's Gideon now, and he is on Bant after losing his irregulars. Unlike Jace, though, he doesn't forget his trauma. He carries it with him like as part of his ordeal,
like a man would.
Yeah. Next is Nissa, but what are your thoughts on Gideon?
I really like him as a character. We do see him on Innistrad. We do see him on Zendikar.
Yeah.
And he's one of those characters that like he's a level force.
Yeah.
Like every time he pops up, at least in the readings that I've done, he is the stabilization. He is the foundation that people follow.
Because he's an immovable stone. He's a rock. He's solid. He's a good foundation.
Exactly.
I gained an appreciation for him throughout this because I never actually ran into Gideon much.
Yeah.
Like in the card game up until now, and like. That story is brutal, but, like, he did nothing but come out better for it, like, having learned the lessons of the past and his trials.
There's a lot of that with the Planeswalkers we come across.
Yeah.
It's horrible trauma, death, horrible trauma. At least I learned something from it.
Exactly. Except for Jace.
And Soren.
Yeah.
And Nahiri. And...
I think Nahiri learned some stuff. But
she becomes too vengeful.
We'll cover it.
We'll touch off on
We're going to talk about Nahiri quite a bit in the next episode.
And I really do enjoy these characters that they've learned from what they've been through.
Yeah.
And that's honestly the basis of what causes the Gatewatch to form. Is
they learn that, like, separate they're weak, but together they're unstoppable.
Right. And that actually starts with the three, which is, funnily enough, Soren, Nahiri, and Ujin.
Yeah.
Because they see what's going on and realize we need to come together to be greater than we are to stop this. Yeah. And it blows up in their face.
Almost quite literally. Thanks to my girl Chandra. Up next is Nissa, somebody who I mentioned in our Innistrad episode. I've gained a new appreciation for her. Right now I'm neck deep in the book The Teeth of Akum, and as we stated, like, Nissa's pretty competent.
Yeah.
I used to hate her, this is just a side note, but I used to hate her when I started playing Magic Arena, because when I started, Nissa landfall decks were huge and fucking destroying everything. Yeah. Like, I would like play a Nissa deck, and I think it was like Nissa Voice of the World or something like that. She's a planeswalker with landfall. I'm butchering this because I'm not looking at my notes, but and just like every time I fought one of those decks, I would just get absolutely decimated.
Well, anytime you fight a green ramp deck, it's like you have to hit that fast or you are not going to survive.
Well, especially because I was playing Wolves at the time, and like Wolves have never really been competitive, with the exception of like Commander, where Tovolar is really good. But
Tovolar, Arlen.
For like regular Standard, not Commander, like the Wolves just never could quite meet muster.
Because you need all the buffing.
This information comes from Nissa's origin, home. For some reason, the Magic website doesn't actually credit the author, but according to the wiki, it was written by Kimberly Crines and Adam Lee. Like, the story just doesn't say written by. It was weird. I don't know if they, like, did something and Wizards.
It could be that it was pulled from a book or something.
I'm not sure. No, because this was written. All these stories were written at Magic the Gathering Origins, which was a set released, I think, in like 2015. Which is where all this is like the revised lore, because these planeswalkers existed prior. They just had different lore that Magic like changed a little bit, or Wizards changed. So the story starts with Nissa in a dream. In this dream, Nissa is standing in a stream of light in this prophecy dream. In the dream of the prophecy stream, things are not as peaceful as they seem.
I'm going to kick you where your butt cheeks make a scene.
I wrote this knowing it would annoy you, and the look you just gave me was perfect.
Yeah.
I was one sentence away, and let me start over. The story starts with Nissa in a dream. In this dream, Nissa is standing in a stream of light in this prophecy dream. In the dream of the prophecy stream, things are not as peaceful as they seem. The fabric of the stream is coming apart at the seams. And then in my notes, okay, I'll stop.
Yeah.
This stream is flowing around Nissa, giving her a feeling of deep calm. However, a large black knot comes rushing up through the bands of light in the stream, smacking Nissa directly in the face. This large mass is writhing, gnashing, and growing until it suffocates her, and she awakes with a start. The story has an image of Nissa drawn by Chase Stone, who I want to take a second to highlight. He has done a ton of Magic cards, including 2 different Jaces, our boy Jinji from Kamigawa, Nissa the Ascendant Animist, and fucking Nahiri. Nahiri the Unforgiving.
Jeez.
Weirdly, he's also the second person in this episode to have created the card Planar Bridge, because the guy we mentioned before, Raymond Swanson, also drew Planar Bridge. And then Chase Stone also drew 2 different forms of Saurian and Tameo.
If you actually look at Planar Bridge, the card itself, it's actually in the shape of Nico Bolas's horns.
Is it really?
Yeah,
that's
if
cool.
I remember correctly here. I'm going to pull up an image.
Yeah, let's take a look.
Yeah, if you look at it, it's pretty close. The artifact. Oh, where's the
Planar Bridge, 6 cost, legendary artifact, pay 8 and tap and put a permanent from your library into the battlefield. Oh, that's really good. Yeah, I guess from the set Aether Revolt.
People don't use it actually though, which is weird.
I mean, 8's a lot to pay.
Yeah, but to get anything out of your deck for free.
But like, is there anything that costs like that much? Like most decks don't have.
Eldrazi's.
Okay.
Because those are
well, but it's colored, so you couldn't use it in Commander.
No. Planar Bridge is colorless.
No, never mind. Yeah, you're right.
It's an artifact. You'd know this if you read the lore.
Anyway, after screaming herself awake, it takes Nissa a few moments to calm herself, and she overhears a conversation going on in the other room. This conversation is between her mother, Miro, and the chief of their tribe, called Numa. Is the chief of the tribe, not the tribe itself. The tribe Nissa is from is called Jaraga, which are a tribe of fiercely xenophobic and rigid elves who value their own traditions above even other elves. So the Jaraga feel themselves as so superior, they actually hate other elves too.
So every elf in every mythological setting ever?
Yeah, pretty much.
Like... like if you've read Lord of the Rings or you know anything about it,
yeah,
the elves of Middle Earth are like, we're the best elves. There's 19 other elves, but we're the best.
Yeah, but we're the best of the 19.
It's like, all right, go fuck yourselves.
So the village chief and Moreau discuss these dreams, unaware that Nissa is listening. The village chief believes the dreams are a portent of coming doom, and that Nissa and her mother, who are animists, in fact the last animists, are going to bring this doom to the village. Nissa's mother disagrees, arguing that Zendikar is not vengeful and that these dreams are not them being targeted.
Can you clarify what an animist is?
It's like what an animist is. Like they worship nature.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just for our listeners, I want to make sure everyone's on the same
page. I mean, this one is just like a straight up like one-to-one with what animists are in real life. It's not really touched on the story here, but it's implied that in the past... So Zendikar at this point in time is very dangerous. It wasn't always that way, and we'll find out later, but it's the sealing of the Eldrazi that causes Zendikar to start rebelling against itself, essentially, to try and destroy the infection. The animists were blamed for that. It's implied.
Oh, that's the royal.
The royal, exactly. Which we'll cover very heavily in detail a little bit later.
Zendikar is just one of those planes that, like, There's so much.
Actually, we're gonna cover it in like a paragraph.
Oh, nice.
Nissa's mother says that Zendikar is not vengeful, and these dreams are not them being targeted. The argument ends, and the village chief decides that Nissa and her mother must be banished from the tribe. At which point, he and Nissa's mother left, presumably to continue the discussion. Nissa, now fully alone, recalls her mother's words that the visions were Zendikar trying to communicate with her, which confirms Nissa's already growing fears that Zendikar is indeed hunting her. Like, so she was worried about that, and with that knowledge of like Zendikar trying to communicate to her, she actually believes she is being targeted by the planet.
There is something in this. There is a physical manifestation of planes.
Yep.
Nissa is one of the people who can communicate with them.
Yeah.
They're typically referred to as elementals, but they actually do have a better title, which is World Soul.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's a couple cards like that.
Yeah, the one for Zendikar is, very classic elemental looking. I think there's one for Innistrad, but they're not really clear on that. Nissa communicates with it, because whatever plane she goes to, she tries to communicate with the World Soul.
Everything you're saying, by the way, is going to come up later.
Oh, okay, then I'll stop. Continue.
Yeah, no. I didn't mean to cut you off, but you're absolutely correct. We're gonna talk about that.
I just didn't know how far into that it plays out now. So I just wanted to touch on it.
It's going to play into the story here. So Nissa, after her mom left, she decides to flee. Leaving behind the village, she exiles herself, essentially. Nissa flees the village that very night, heading into the jungles of Zendikar, specifically the Marasta region, home of the elves. To give a bit of context as to why this is a terrible idea, the jungles of Zendikar are home to all manner of extremely powerful beasts, the main one being the Baloth. These creatures are muscular, carnivorous beasts covered in horns, spines, and plates of other type. They are incredibly agile and can leap from tree to tree with ease to chase their prey. And that comes from there's like a D&D book for Zendikar called Planeshift Zendikar, which gives context on the plane for if you're running like a Dungeons and Dragons campaign.
That would be a very interesting campaign.
Yeah, and there's actually more of them. Like, so, and then this is another thing. Like, I didn't know about this. Like, but there's like D&D lore books for Magic. Beyond Ravnica, like there's like they're called Plane Shift and then the Plane. There's a bunch of them.
The only crossover I knew of was the Baldur's Gate one that came out with Universes Beyond earlier this year.
Yeah, and there's a Ravnica book that came out as well. But like, yeah, there's a whole bunch of them. So, I don't know if you're looking for Dungeons & Dragons campaign. Zendikar is pretty cool, actually. Zendikar was meant to be an adventure block.
Yeah.
So it's perfect for a D&D campaign.
It's actually one of the few planes that doesn't have a centralized civilization.
Yeah. Well, it's because the Royal makes it impossible.
The plane is so chaotic that there's never been time for anyone to quote-unquote conquer it. Mm-hmm. So there's no unified political force.
Yeah, it's all just nomads.
Right, it's perfect for a D&D campaign.
Yep. Okay, so in the forest, Nissa once again comes across this stream of flowing light from her prophecy, this time in reality, though, not a dream. Initially running away from the stream, I'm not going to do it again, it eventually managed to catch up and capture her, wrapping her in a cocoon of glowing light. During this wrapping, Nissa comes to understand the phenomenon and connects directly to the soul of Zendikar. She is shown a vision from Zendikar where she follows the glowing stream through the whole planet, watching glowing specks of life, and the glow of the planet's life itself. Finally, she is shown a mountain, the teeth of a comb, and inside this mountain she sees a wriggling mass of black, which is then freed and consumes everything on the entire planet. We know this, to be the Eldrazi.
Right.
We've talked about it a bunch, but Nissa doesn't know that yet. Nissa awakes to her friend Mazik, who managed to follow her since he saw her leave. Here, Nissa learns Mazik, her mom, and Mazik's parents believe the animist ways and want her to follow the vision. Nissa and her friend Mazik do, at the urging of the stream of glowing light, which seems more playful than nightmarish now that they understand what it is. Because Nissa was terrified of it originally, but once she connected with it, she said,
because it's constantly reaching out for her. That's terrifying in itself.
Yes, yeah, because you don't know if it's coming for you or coming with you.
Actually, quick side note on the World Soul thing. We talked about this in Kamigawa. Kodai, that's the World Soul of Kamigawa. So, because I'm looking up all the...
Oh, Kyodai.
Because I'm looking up all now, like, Ravnica has one, Theros has one,
interesting.
Phyrexia has one.
Weird.
I think I actually have this card. I have this card, actually. And Innistrad has one, too. So, yeah, there are a bunch of World Souls out there that are, like, Not exactly important, but it's fun fact.
It's nice to know that Kyodai was the world soul.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, so that's fun. So anyway, Nissa convening with this light makes her magic stronger, like immensely so.
It's living ley lines. I mean, that's just power and power.
And this is where I don't think I mentioned it here, but she tries to summon vines, and it just like a huge explosion of them.
We actually touch off on this, or we will be touching off on this in the Innistrad episode, where she views ley lines as vines.
Yeah.
So when they're trying to pull off a certain ritual, it shows her pulling up vines from the ground.
Yeah. So eventually, Nissa and her friend Mazik leave the forest behind and find themselves in a dusty red canyon. The elves follow the soul of Zendikar for 2 days before asking it to lead them to water. 2 days later, it does, and they drink greedily from a bog, using magic to extract water from it, like pure water. They then begin to travel through the bog, and Nissa has a revelation about the soul of Zendikar, namely, that it doesn't seem to realize the threat it's leading them towards. For the soul, this bog is just another part of itself. For the elves, though, this bog is very treacherous, and Nissa's connection to Zendikar actually leads her to go through, even, she relishes it, because she understands, the nature of life itself.
Right.
So even this, gross, dank bog, she feels connected to.
You see this a lot with, I just was watching something that had this, where they were talking about, actually, Avatar: The Last Airbender. They touch off on one of the air temples that's been taken over by refugees.
Yeah.
And at first, Aang is very upset, obviously, because it was his home. It was his
I think I
place.
remember this episode, actually.
But they find, hermit crabs are still living there. And he's like, even in this polluted area, there's still life here. There's still things that are happy to be here.
Yep.
And it's just another aspect of the world.
Exactly, and that's exactly what she realizes as she goes through this bog.
By the way, that's not the message of that episode. I want to make that very clear. It's just an allegory. Please continue.
Hey, don't look now, but I think that guy's the Avatar. The fucking...
Sokka's handprint.
It's the episode where they go through the mountain tunnels, and Sokka is paired with Tommy.
That's Chong.
Tommy Chong. Anyway, so as the elves make their way through the bog, suddenly, vampires. Vampires and elves are natural enemies on Zendikar, and Mazik smells a group of them. 5 vampires accost them, and they try to follow the soul of Zendikar out of the bog. For Nissa's part, this is actually extremely easy. She is able to nimbly traipse through the forest. Mazik, her friend, however, is not so lucky. Nissa hears a shriek, and despite knowing it leads likely to death, she can't leave her friend behind, and returns, using her connection to Zendikar to save her friend. She intends to grab the vampires, with tree branches, but instead turns the entire ground against them, making short work of all 5 of them. So, her magic is so powerful due to the connection with her soul to Zendikar that when she tries to make a tree grab the monsters, it literally just, the land itself comes up like a cavernous maw and just crunches them.
This is very, origin story of every magic user.
Yeah.
It's okay, we're going to teach you, the prophesized one. It's we're going to teach you a base level spell. Well, he leveled the country. Well, okay, keep going.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what happens, but in their favor this time.
Exactly.
Nothing bad happens from it. Mazik and Nissa are encouraged by this, and Nissa uses the journey to practice her land magic more. After a good while, the stream of light they were following suddenly stops. It took a few tense moments, but the elves realize the Royal is happening. For context, the Royal is a feature on current time Zendikar in which the land shifts in dramatic ways. From the Art of the Magic the Gathering Zendikar book, the Royal can cause... That's the source. The Royal can cause large boulders and rocks to erupt from the earth, cause tornadoes and massive dust storms, tidal waves, sinkholes, gas geysers, meteoric growth of plants, and tectonic upheaval. This wasn't always the case on Zendikar. We'll get more into that in the next episode of Zendikar, the prehistory. But it's funny, because Zendikar was actually a really peaceful plane up until your boy Soren, Ujin, and Hiri trapped an eldritch horror on it.
To be fair, they knew they were sacrificing one plane for the good of the multiverse.
That's what they thought, anyway.
That was their... Again, Soren's 7,000 years old, and he's like, yeah, this is a great plan. Nihiri's 4,000. Yeah, this is a great plan. Ujin was 10,000 years old. Was yeah, this is a great plan.
Yeah.
And then in hindsight's 2020, and they're this is a really bad idea.
I'm curious I don't know exactly what happens to Ujin after all this.
He dies for a bit.
Yeah, you mentioned that in Innistrad 1, I think, right?
He gets into a fight, I think, with Nico Bolas, who ends up killing him. And then I think it's Tahiri, who is one of... Teferi.
Yep.
I don't know why I said Tahiri. Teferi.
Well, because you're thinking of Nohiri.
Yeah. Teferi actually changes time...
to where Ujin isn't dead.
To where Ujin just gets wounded. And right now, at this point, Ujin is inside his own coffin recuperating.
Dominaria is going to be...
this has nothing to do with Dominaria.
Oh my god. Well, I'm just because Dominaria is entirely book based, and that is going to be one hell of an undertaking.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of books and a lot of Wikipedia research.
Yeah. During the Royal, Nissa tries to reconnect with Zendikar to Comet, but is unsuccessful in stopping the Royal. She does reconnect and has a revelation about the nature of the Royal, and finds out that it's the planet itself reacting to a hostile force within it. So she learns that the Royal isn't like Zendikar being vengeful, as her mother said. It is instead the planet trying to get rid of the Eldrazi.
Right. So it's a body's response to an infection.
Exactly.
It's raising its temperature. It's causing the nose to run. It's trying to do whatever it can do to flush it.
Exactly. And a quote from the story. It was the land rearing like a spooked horse. So horrified was it of the darkness that it had lost itself to fear. So the planet's scared. And Nissa attempts to calm it, but she's unsuccessful, at which point she starts to hum an animus tune her mother taught her, which then entrances the land. The Royal stops, and the glowing stream of light they've been following returns. Along with that, the embodied Royal takes shape in the form of an elemental. They follow this elemental to the...
I actually sent you the card for that.
Yep. What is it?
Soul of Zendikar.
Soul of Zendikar, okay. Yep. Yep. So they follow that. They follow this elemental to the teeth of a comb. As they get closer to the mountain, or rather to the darkness within, the elves and the party are in pain. Like, the eminence of the Eldrazi is actually physically causing them pain. The elemental and Mazik actually have it much worse than Nissa. Like, Nissa's actually more or less okay, but Mazik and the elemental are not.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going towards something that eats magic,
yeah,
and you are a magical creature...
Yeah, well, because, I mean, Nissa's just, honestly, Nissa's just made of different stuff than Mazik. Like, Mazik is just a standard elf. Nissa is, like, an all-powerful fucking god.
Well, she's also, right now, being bolstered by the entire plane.
Exactly.
So,
well, even the plane is sick, because the elemental, which is the embodiment of the plane, is having trouble approaching this mountain as well, because it's scared. Finally, the elemental stops, and Nissa looks off into the horizon. There, they see the teeth of a coombe, with many hedrons floating still in the air above the highest peak. At this point, the elemental and Mazik can go no further. Caring for her comrades, Nissa puts Mazik on the elemental's back, and the elemental and Mazik head back down the path. Nissa braves the next steps alone, climbing to the peak of the teeth. Here, she recreates the vision she saw of herself back in the forest, of her standing and using her power to cleanse Zendikar. She draws deep until she surpasses her own limits of power, and then releases it in one massive shockwave. When the power calms, she expects to see the mountain in ruins, with the dark force pouring out for her to face. Unfortunately, the spell she poured so much power into did nothing at all. That is how strong the Eldrazi are, is they're actually able to stop her.
Yeah,
here.
They can eat magic. I mean, to them, that was a tasty snack.
It was a snack, yeah, exactly. Suddenly, she feels
pretzel bites. Like,
pizza bagels. Don't mind if I do.
Like, legitimately, this is nothing to them.
Yeah, no. And suddenly, she feels the invading force of the darkness, which contorts as if to mimic evil laughter, and shows her the nature of the darkness in the mountain. This psychic assault proves too much to handle, and some force inside her cracks. She lets go, and planeswalks for the first time. Here's a passage from the story. I include it here because it's a good demonstration of what planeswalking is like, because we've talked about planeswalking a lot, and this is like an actual description of what Nissa experiences when she does so. Quote from the story. What happened next was impossible for Nissa to understand. Excruciating pain shot through her, and Nissa was sent hurtling out into a void. She saw light and energy, swirls and holes. There was no up or down. There was no land or sky. It was black, then it was bright. She was tumbling, but there was nowhere to stop. There was nothing to hold on to. If this was her end, she just wanted it to end. Yeah, which, like, goddamn, that's a confusing...
Especially for the first time and unexpectedly.
Yeah, which is the case every time. It's always unexpected.
I'm two minds about Planeswalking. I think it's a fun ability that would be to have.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, Why would you ever go back to your home? There's an infinite multiverse to explore.
Well, as we learned from the Wanderer on Kamigawa, perhaps home is not where you lived, but where the people you're friends with. Home is the friends we made along the way, essentially.
I hate that. I hate that so much. Not that in this context. I just always hate the real treasure was the friends made along the way. No,
I mean, that's the One Piece.
it is not. I'm 85% sure it's the machine that makes devil fruits. I'm 85%. But
Yeah,
continue.
I wonder. From the Planeswalking, she lands on solid Earth once more. With the differences in color and smell, Nissa realizes she's no longer on Zendikar, a planet she knows intimately, obviously. Realizing she failed her promise to Zendikar, she slams down her fist on the ground in frustration, which causes the soul of this plane to jump into her. She's on the plane of Lorwyn, which we will cover in detail coming up with the Phyrexians, because it's involved in March of the Machine. So Lorwyn, we're going to cover it eventually, but for now, the soul of this plane shows her a darkness beneath its surface as well, a being known as the Great Aurora. For our purposes, on this plane she meets elves and agrees to join their hunt of blights, only to realize the elves are doing nothing more than hunting harmless creatures. They ignore Nissa's warnings not to hunt the creatures, and then they turn on Nissa. Nissa raises her sword to stand against them, but is interrupted by the real threat. From the story, quote, "A towering wall of twisted, squirming night was approaching them. As it moved across the land, it left dark destruction in its wake. The elves from the plane believe Nissa did this, but are quickly infected with Shadowmoor, is what it's called. Nissa flees and she fights off the shadow, which is trying to invade her mind and attempting to convince her to join into the Shadowmoor. It's basically like, Nissa, you can get stronger. You can save Zendikar. Join me.
Yeah.
Give in to my will. Like,
I'm having Innistrad flashbacks.
yeah, and I mean, Lorwyn and Shadowmoor is several episodes in its own right, but for our purposes here in Nissa's origin, that's what happens. Eventually, she fights off the shadow and planeswalk back to Zendikar to keep her promise to the planet and save it. And yeah, and that's Nissa's origin.
All right.
Fun. What do you think?
I don't know why, but I'm getting the whole loftier than thou vibe from Nissa.
No, she's actually pretty down to earth.
No, I understand that, but like I don't know why, but whenever I think of her as like she'll never come out and say it, but I get that vibe of like I'm better than you because I understand the planes.
Well, so it's funny you say that because she actually at no point ever is that.
No, and I understand that.
Like she is actually one of the more caring planeswalkers I've read about. Like she actually gives a shit about people. Like she was ready to die to save Mazik, and then even in this own story, when Mazik and the Elemental couldn't go any further, she braved it alone because she's like, I'm the only one who can do this.
Right, and again, like I know that's not her, but for whatever reason, that's the vibe I get from her, and I don't know why.
I don't know, racist probably against elves.
Yeah, probably.
Up next, and to great applause from me, and hopefully the one that I'm going to try not to cry during, Chandra Nalar. She is a quite literally hot-headed pyromancer from Kaladesh who fires first and asks questions of the ashes. A very loyal friend to the few she has. Fucking awesome, right?
No, I'm imagining her like screaming at a pile of ash, like, "Who do you work for?"
Where is she?
There's just ashes blowing in the wind.
A very loyal friend to the few she has and capable of conjuring fire elementals, ember cats, and phoenixes. Her story starts with her as a young 11-year-old in the city of Girapur, Kaladesh. The story is Chandra's origin, Fire Logic, written by Doug Bayer. I'm excited for this one. I'm going to try not to cry, because this one is actually especially brutal. Compared to like the other three we've covered. And I'm glad I saved this one for last, because like...
I touched off it on the last Innistrad episode, the Eldritch Moon, and it is, even by Magic Gathering standards... It's pretty dark.
Yeah.
Listen, it does follow the very classic trope of heroes and stories of the orphan.
No.
Parents die, right?
Spoilers. But I mean, I don't. She's not an orphan by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, like technically, I guess, but You'll see. You'll see. For a quick primer on Kaladesh, Kaladesh is the plane that is rich in aether. It's actually very close to the Blind Eternities, relatively on like a planar level. So like if you picture like let's say Zendikar is like 6 feet, 6 miles from the Blind Eternities. Kaladesh is like 2 miles from the Blind Eternities.
Okay.
So
like the walls that separate it are very thin.
Yes, because it's brushing up against it, essentially. Okay. From the Magic the Gathering wiki, the influence and cyclical passage of aether through the world below is the driving force of the plane. The aether sphere may be observed as twisting swirls in the sky. The entire ecosystem is influenced by the aether and grows in similar swirling patterns. So, like, it's rubbing against the Blind Eternities, which causes aether to leak from the Blind Eternities into the plane.
That's got to be one hell of a unique mana.
Yeah. This aether is used to power inventions and magic, although natural mages are rare and they're seen as threats to society here on Kaladesh. Pyromancy in particular is reviled as it interacts in dangerous ways with raw ether, meaning it explodes. If you take some fire to raw aether, raw aether can be essentially thought of as just like gasoline.
Yeah. If you, for those of you listening, if you ever get a chance, look up Kaladesh just for the architecture. Yeah,
Kaladesh is cool. I'm looking forward to covering it, but I think it takes place after Zendikar, so
it's very how do I want to put this? Arabian Nights themed almost.
Yeah. I think it is meant to be almost like Indian inspired.
It's. I mean, like I'm looking at a container of aether now, and it's like gilded to look like a magical lamp. It is. This whole plane is designed with such love, and like every detail of it is amazing.
Yeah. Kaladesh is really cool. I'm looking forward to getting there, but I got Zendikar to get through, so
there's so much to get through.
It's on this plane that Chandra's parents make a living as both inventors and smugglers of the highly controlled aether. For her part, Chandra at first attempted to follow in their footsteps. She actually tried a lot of things, from school to inventing, art, and learning. She is described as having her patience wear thin before completing any projects and always coming home with bruised knuckles. She is also shown to be incredibly agile. Today, the start of the story, marks an important day for young Chandra. It's her first solo smuggling job.
Yay!
Exactly. She sets off from her parents with her usual impatience and dashes off in disguise as a schoolchild and darts through the main thoroughfare. Finding it a bit clogged for her liking, Chandra hops a dead-end wall and lands smack dab in the face of a group of soldiers. Yep. That's a pattern in Chandra's life.
We saw that. You see this in the Innistrad, where it's just like, ooh, punch fighting. It's like, take a breath. Just for the love of God, Chandra, take a breath.
She does not take a breath. She never will, and that's why I love her. These soldiers advise her this is a restricted way and quickly see through her disguise and attempt to search her for illegal aether, because they realize almost immediately that she's not a school child. Yeah. They're like, yeah, no, you're doing some shit. As they do, she punches two of them, immediately realizes how bad of an idea that is, and then is captured on the spot by the soldiers. She fights tooth and nail to no avail, and the soldier's captain, Captain Barl, arrives. Barl, B-A-R-A-L. He has his own card. He's very important, that's why I wanted to make sure to stress his name. The captain then degrades Chandra, who is barely containing her fury, and orders her to comply. He touches her shoulder, described as a clinical cold touch, when something amazing happens. Heat makes her skin and hands glow, until finally her hands engulf in flames. The soldiers release her and she jumps back. Chandra is stunned by these flames, especially at the fact that the fire doesn't hurt, and then at this point the Captain Barrel, reaches out once more to try and, calm her. Chandra yells and swipes automatically, causing an arc of fire which stymies the soldiers. Chandra runs, and the soldiers call for whirlers to chase after the newly discovered pyromancer. Whirlers are little bug-shaped drones. You can, if you type in whirler, there's a bunch of cards that have them. She runs through the streets, her fire gone for the moment, and attempts to flee home. However, she is cut off by some drones, which give chase through the streets and alleyways. Chandra then runs into Mrs. Pashiri, the woman she was supposed to deliver aether to. Mrs. Bashiri makes the secret sign of the Nalars, which is described as kind of like an okay sign and then pushing up goggles, because her dad wears goggles because they're inventors. So that's considered like the sign of the sign of the Nalars. She gives Chandra instructions to run through her foundry, Mrs. Bashiri's, and go out the back door, at which point she shoves Chandra into the foundry, and Chandra runs in. As Chandra makes her way through the foundry, she makes note of the many devices and automatons in the place. Suddenly, the dead foundry springs to life. Orange lights turn on overhead, and the many artifact creatures come to and begin to descend on Chandra. I'm not exactly sure what was like.
Why they animated?
Well, yeah, well, we're gonna find out. Like, Mrs. Bashiri didn't betray her, so I'm not exactly sure what mechanism causes these to come to life. My only guess is maybe the soldiers chasing after Chandra. Like, know she's in there, and they use some kind of like magic to animate them. That's the only thing.
Does she have any aether on her?
Chandra? Yes, she has the tube that she is smuggling.
Maybe it's reacting to that and trying to get to it.
Oh, that might be it. Okay, yeah.
Because I mean, it's a power source there. They are machines. We've all seen Futurama.
Yep. Kill all humans. So as these machines descend on Chandra, she feels a surge of heat and tries to run through the machines. Eventually, one stops her and she punches because, and I quote, "that was fist logic." That's directly from the story. The punch throws a blast of flame which clears the way. She charges through using her flames to destroy anything in her path. She finds herself at the back door of the foundry, but she is surrounded. Realizing that she still has the aether strapped to her back, she throws it at the main automaton, which is blocking her way, and then blasts the aether canister with fire. This causes an explosion, freeing her from the foundry. Chandra then returns to her parents' home and confesses how badly she messed up. And don't forget, first solo mission.
Yeah.
She tells them about the chase and the fire she can conjure and the explosion. Expecting to be called a freak, her parents instead embrace her, happy that she's a pyromancer. Similar to Jace, like when they find out, they're like, "Oh my god, you're gifted, this is awesome." Her mother applies this adage to the fire and its importance. From the story, quote, "Your fire," her mother said, "it's a form of magic, a special kind, but it's something that intimidates them. If it's something you can do without machines, without the need for aether, you do it your own way. You see? And they hate that." The family shares a moment, and the story cuts to later that evening. Chandra is awoken from the darkness by her mother's soft but insistent voice. She opens her eyes and sees tools, knapsacks, and her parents carrying possessions. They have Chandra grab some more, and they leave, welding the door behind them. They go through the city in the dead of night and climb into a wagon that's waiting for them. The next several months are spent in hiding, traveling from backwater village to backwater village as they flee the results of Chandra's actions. Chandra, for her part, is actually enjoying the adventure, but is worried about the suffering her parents might be going through.
Yeah.
She's 11, but she kind of understands, like, this is my fault, but not totally yet.
She understands that she had a play. She's at that age where, like, and this is nothing against any children out there, but like, kids really don't have a self-conscious for a bit.
No,
hers is starting to wake
yeah.
up.
She's starting to like understand, like, oh,
there are consequences to my actions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So she spends her time in the villages, wandering the wilderness and bringing back fruit and seeds for the villagers, thinking very little of the fire that caused the family's exile. So she like goes out, forages, and like as a gift to the villagers for being nice, leaves food on their doorstep. Elsewhere, a soldier reports to Captain Baral. They spotted the Nalars, although they have no immediate location. The soldier then reports the council wants them to cease the search, not believing it's worth the effort. It's very expensive. Right. Captain Baral disagrees, and I quote, Captain Baral is described, he has a drill sergeant voice, so I'm going to do my best to try and do that. Captain Baral says, quote, "This is not about a couple of fugitives, soldier," said the captain, his voice not even rising above a whisper. It's about the future. We need to show the people of the city we're prepared to move on beyond the barbaric age of our past, to embrace progress. That girl is a remnant of a chaotic time, an obstacle. If we're going to move forward, we need our path to be clear. The councils will understand that. Quite ironic for a guy talking about moving past barbarism to want to hunt down an 11-year-old and her family, just because she can make fire with her hands. But as her mother said, fire is anathema to their society. They feel, and they're basically the society is built on inventors and creators, so they view fire as a force of destruction, which is not respected. Essentially, they're like, we do nothing but build and create, and fire does nothing but destroy.
They're artisans.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, that entire world is beautifully crafted. There's the gasoline tanks are gilded. I mean, fire is destructive to them.
Yeah, they're not fans of it. And Captain Baral, in particular, is a huge dick. Back to Chandra, the villages found out that she burned... Wait, did I read that? Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a paragraph. Earlier, one time in the village, Chandra was in the forest, and she was accosted by a herd of furry territorial beasts. And without thinking, the fire came to her, and she used it to stop them. She didn't kill them, but she like burned their faces and all of that. This excites Chandra, and she's unable to sleep that night, relishing the flames within her. In the future, or like currently, the villagers find out that she burned these beasts. Her father essentially tricks her into wearing a vent pack, something that will convert her excess energy into steam. You can actually see it. I think some of the Chandra planeswalkers actually have the vent pack on.
A lot of her artwork still has it, where she can basically power it up.
So the vent pack is essentially, it's a muting device. It's to keep her from. It's the opposite. It's not power. It mutes her. Her father tricks her into wearing a vent pack, something that will convert her excess energy into steam. This, he says, will allow her to control the flames better. Chandra questions her father if this situation is all her fault, and her father kindly lets her know that all he cares about is the family and making the world a better place for their family. Truthfully, I didn't mention it too much here, but like the Nalars, Chandra's parents are like some of the most kind, loving people I've like ever seen. Like, you know, I would encourage everybody to read, like, of course, every story, but like this one in particular was very emotionally affecting, because like the Nalars, like they loved this girl, they doted on her, you know, which makes her their eventual fate.
There's like I'm looking at Chandra's artwork online, and there's always there's always some sort of tubing coming off of her.
Yep.
But it's definitely clear that like even in like the Phyrexian invasion artwork, she still has something like that on her.
Really? That's interesting.
It's that armor she wears.
Oh, okay, yeah. Later on, Chandra is out playing in the woods when she hears the villagers screaming. Soldiers had surrounded the village, and Captain Baral was interrogating them about the Nalars. Chandra calls out to them, the soldiers, giving herself up for the sake of this village. The captain tells her she's an agent of chaos and accuses her of killing dozens of people in this village. Chandra denies the claim, and then to her horror, the captain gives the order and his men start setting fire to the village. Chandra's father uses a flashbang to distract the soldiers and then sprints away with Chandra. So these soldiers show up, accuse her of killing people.
And then start killing people.
Well, because what they're going to do is, we're going to find out, they're going to blame her for this fire.
Yeah, I mean...
While sprinting... next sentence. While sprinting through, Chandra realizes this will be blamed on her and finds her mother's shawl in the dirt. She then realizes she's standing outside of the hut that they had been staying in, and that hut was on fire. She is devastated in the dirt, and her father attempts to give himself up to Captain Baral to give Chandra time to escape. The following is directly from the story. Quote, Baral approaches her father, put one hand on his shoulder, then stabbed him through the gut with a dagger. Her father gasped and crumpled, falling to his knees, holding his stomach in his hands. He glanced at Chandra for a moment, and she saw his last emotion in his eyes. Not fear, but disappointment that he couldn't do better for her. He bent over, shuddering, and fell to the ground. The soldiers capture Chandra and load her on the airship, while all she can see is the death of her father over and over. Like, she's devastated. She's frozen. Now it cuts to her back in Akara in the arena. She is face to face with an executioner. Her child's hands are cuffed as her sentence is announced. She is blamed for the death of 3 in the village. She tries to call her fire, but the vent pack suppresses it. Chandra scans the crowd for her mother, but realizes, oh, god damn it. This is the part that got me emotional.
Ladies and gentlemen, the tears have started.
Yeah, fuck. Well, this one was really good, very emotional. As she scans the crowd for her mother, she realizes her mother must be dead, because otherwise she would be in this crowd.
Yeah.
As Chandra actually begins to give up, she spots Mrs. Bashiri. The tear-eyed woman makes the signal of the Lars, which... God damn it. I really hate that I can't control my own fucking emotions anymore.
See, this is why I learned how to, like, bury my emotions.
Yeah, I used to be able to do that. Now I have no choice anymore. The teary-eyed woman makes the signal to Lars, which re-emboldens Chandra's. From the story, quote, Chandra's fist squeezed. The vent pack hissed, then whistled like a tea kettle. She kept her eyes on Mrs. Bashiri, that gesture, that respect for who she was. She was a God damn it. This is the line that got me. She was a Nalar. She was Chandra Nalar. The executioner comes up and speaks to her, immediately giving away who it is. The executioner is Captain Baral himself. Baral raised the blade to end her life, and Chandra dug deep, grasping into herself for the power of flame. Her newly awakened power melts the vent pack into slag, and then she turns into a living flame, uttering a scream of fury as she explodes, melting Baral into slag himself. When she comes to, she finds herself surrounded by monks. The explosion of flame awakened her spark, and she was on some strange plane. What?
Just continue.
Okay. The monks surround her and attempt to calm her, but this doesn't work. Quote from the story. So she summoned up her will and blasted all of them with fire. Fire logic. This doesn't actually work, and the monks are unharmed. They welcome her as a pyromancer and as a Chandra. The plane she walked to is Regatha, covered by the book The Purifying Fire, one that I'm in the process of reading right now. And thus, that is the origin of Chandra Nalaar.
Do you want someone to help you break up the tears?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, what you got?
So I was looking up, I was trying to find a picture of the vent pack.
Yeah.
So I'm going through the images on Google.
Oh, God.
It gets worse. So, like, there's a picture of her shooting flames, really nice. Picture of her holding up her hand for the Gatewatch oath, very nice. Her parents in a wagon, very nice. Then the next one is DIY compost toilet urine diverter and ventilation kit.
What?
I don't know why.
I don't know what the words you're saying are.
So, okay.
Okay.
Her parents.
Parents in the wagon, yeah.
DIY compost toilet urine diverter. And
Yeah, it's like Scott's showing me like a schematic of like a urine.
I don't know why. I'm looking up Chandra images and that popped up.
Are they trying to imply she's in the pee? Like I don't get it.
I think because I typed vent pack.
Oh, okay.
And that's what it pulled a tag.
Yeah, that story in particular.
That is. Yeah,
that's freaking brutal. And then like right at the end with like Mrs. Bashiri like
still gave her the sign.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, I'm done. I'm not gonna cry.
You good?
I'm fine. I mean, that's it. We're done. So
I absolutely adore like learning about the Planeswalkers. Like even the less liked ones, like Soren. Love his story just because.
Yeah.
There's no uninteresting Planeswalker.
Yeah, not really. No.
No, there's one. We touched on him.
The Masked Inquisitor, Vraska.
Veronis.
Yeah, Veronis, who just died. What do you do? Oh, I show up and I die.
He showed up. He got a name that didn't relate to him. They called him the Gray Fencer. He didn't fight like a fencer. Had one task and failed at it. Yeah. So, but
they're interesting. I mean, like Chandra's. I mean, obviously, like I like Chandra, so I found that story particularly compelling. But like, it really gives context to who they end up being later, because like the stories are all like you see the formation of Jace's like memory wiping habit. You see like Chandra is a hothead. That's it. She has no.
You would think, though, that, like, she would learn to rein that in, considering the damage it caused.
Well, because it's established in the story, she's kind of stupid. Like, she's not very smart.
Try to be an artist, an inventor. Nope, burned it all, punched
she just, like, I think she has ADD, to be honest with you. Because she, like, starts shit, and then she's like, I'm bored.
Actually, fascinating connection there between adventuring and ADD. One of the articles I was reading years ago, correlated humans' expansion out of Africa to ADD.
Oh, people were just bored?
No, it was more like they just wanted to keep going to satisfy the serotonin.
Interesting.
So they just kept exploring, and that expanded the territory that humans were in.
Nah, it could be. I don't know.
So if you know someone with ADD, thank them.
Yeah, you're welcome.
No longer living in Africa.
No, I did it. That was me.
No.
I, the pastiest person ever, came from Africa.
Born after me. So I don't thank you for shit.
Nah, check the Wikipedia.
No.
I like go home and fiercely edit the Wikipedia. Like the expansion of the African continent was started largely by Zach, almost in my last name. On the podcast. I mean, I'm sure we'll end up giving it out at some point. But
if you got Discord pulled up, I did send you the pictures for Heliod. Completed.
I haven't pulled up. I don't see it though.
It's above the Soul of Zendikar picture.
Oh, wow! He's pretty spooky looking.
Yeah, they. Who else did they complete that? I was like, there's no way they can do that, and they did it. They got angels, I think. Like they started doing archangels and stuff, and that's.
I mean, impressive. From what we learned on Innistrad, it seems like the angels are particularly susceptible to Eldrazi influence because, like,
there's a difference between Phyrexian and Eldrazi.
Oh, god damn it, you're right. Yeah, I always confuse the two
because the Phyrexians are they do share similar things, but the Eldrazi, their very nature is corruption and consumption, and the Phyrexians are a religious organization.
Yeah.
Which, by its nature, is corruption and consumption.
Yeah.
A lot
Tasty.
yeah.
Thanks for sticking with us on the 4 Planeswalkers there. I'm gonna be emotionally compromised for the rest of the day. Dude, when I read it yesterday, I was fucking like, for like an hour, it was inconsolable.
That I get why, but I've read so many of these stories like throughout the years.
Yeah,
and, like,
they never stop hitting me. I mean, you're talking to the guy who cried during the Sonic movie. When the power of friendship came up towards the end there, I like started I was sitting at Ian's couch in Portland, and I'm sitting there watching it, and I find myself like involuntarily like welling up with tears. I'm like, what the fuck? Why am I crying at the Sonic movie? So anyway, that is Planeswalker Origins. Join us next week for the first episode of Zendikar. And which will be the first of probably 7,000 million billion.
That's going to be a lot.
But yeah, thanks for joining us. See you on the next plane.
Peace out.